Assalamu alaikum, girls. Today the topic which we are going to start is the chapter of nutrition, which we know have started earlier, and we have started the topic of malnutrition before, where I studied protein kind of malnutrition and different kind of malnutritions. Even overnutrition is also one of the kind of malnutrition, and its implications, all other factors we have discussed with them before. So today I'm going to start from the start of the chapter, that what is nutrition and what are macronutrients and micronutrients and why they are compulsory. We will also talk about all these macronutrients and their role one by one. Micronutrients, role of nitrogen, and role of magnesium if possible. So coming back to see what is nutrition, I think I have discussed it before, but I'm again going to discuss that it is the process in which food is obtained or prepared, absorbed and converted into body substances for growth and energy. This is what nutrition is. First, it has different stages. When you obtain the nutrition or make it in your body on your own, then absorbing the nutrients at right time and converting them into your body structure, like proteins, your carbohydrates, your lipids, and your body structures is called as. Apart from that, converting them for growth and energy, to get energy out of these substances, is called as nutrition. So you will remember it is the process of absorption of nutrients, converting them into body substances for growth and energy. Nutrients are used to make energy for the synthesis of new materials. Whatever we absorb in our body, proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, those nutrients are used to make different structures, different new structures. So when we categorize nutrients, there are of two types. Categories of organisms, basically autotrophs and heterotrophs. You might have heard this term before. Autotrophs are those organisms which make their own food, which make whatever the food is on its own. For example, plants and all the photosynthetic synthetic organisms like bacteria, cyanobacteria, and algae. They make their own food from water, carbon dioxide, and minerals. Such organisms are called as autotroph. And then there is another category of organisms called as heterotrophs. These are the organisms which obtain their food from other organisms. They do not make their own food. And among them are the most famous animal category, like giraffes and different lions and cats and all that, from phylum Chordata. But the organisms, from phylum invertebrate are also included as heterotroph, and fungi and all of them which do not make their own food are called as heterotrophs, right? Let's move to the next slide. Plants require nutrients to make their food and also require mineral elements for various activities and structures. Plants are requiring these nutrients so that they can build up their own food, but they can also carry out a lot of different kind of activities, and they can build different structures. One of the most example of a good structure is chlorophyll. Plants have to make it to undergo photosynthesis, and later on that chlorophyll is involved in photosynthetic activities. So the nutrients are required by plants in large amounts and in less amounts. It depends. There are different type of nutrients. The nutrients which are required in large amount are called as macronutrients, and then there are nutrients which are required in less amount. As the name shows, they are called as micronutrients. Macronutrients, micronutrients. The macronutrients, the example of them are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, magnesium, potassium, etc. Now these are required in more amount in plants. As you can see, if you have studied the definition of organic chemistry in chemistry class, you know organic compounds are made up of mostly made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So they are present in most of the nutrients. Then nitrogen, magnesium, and potassium are also required in large quantities. While there are nutrients which are required in less amount are called micronutrients. Example, um, iron, molybdenum, boron, chlorine, zinc, etc. So these are micronutrients and macronutrients. Plants show abnormalities and do not grow normally when they lack these nutrients. If you are not going to provide, or if the plants are not able to get them from their environment, the macronutrients and micronutrients, they will show abnormal behaviors. They will show abnormal growth. They will show stunt growth or turning of yellow leaves. Stunt growth, जो कि आगे भी आ रहा है, means the plant is not growing or the growth is very slow and the plant is not a tall plant. It's very stunted growth. I mean, it's a plant which has limited amount of growth that can affect that plant badly. So that's why these nutrients are essential for life. Talking about these macronutrients and micronutrients one by one, let's talk about macronutrients which are required by plants and what is their role in plants. Phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, and calcium. Let's talk about phosphorus. It's a component of ATP. We haven't studied ATP yet, but we know that ATP is the energy packet. So phosphorus is present in that energy structure. We will discuss it in 7th chapter. And it is very essential component of ATP. And it is also present in nucleic acids and coenzymes. Nucleic acids, I have told it to you before, are present in DNA and RNA. So this nucleic acid is basically comprising other things as well, but for the easy approach, I'm telling you कि ये DNA and RNA में present होता है, and coenzymes अभी हमने पिछले चैप्टर में पढ़े हैं. That enzyme requires coenzymes, and this phosphorus is also necessary for germination of seed, photosynthesis, and protein formation. The seed which germinates will require phosphorus at some point, and it is also required in photosynthesis, and it is also required in protein formation, etc. Let's talk about potassium. Potassium is a very important macronutrient. It regulates the opening and closing of stomata. I have taught you this topic, diagram of opening and closing of stomata. कैसे रात को खुलता है, कैसे होता है, और दिन के वक्त किस तरह से खुलता है, रात के वक्त किस तरह से बंद हो जाता है. तो in that case potassium is also involved. वो हमने भी नहीं पढ़ा, but that diagram is coming in 7th chapter, where I will discuss how potassium is regulating the opening and closing of stomata and reduces water loss from the leaves. This potassium is also involved in preserving water in the leaves, a very important function to reduce the water loss from plant surface, right? So let's talk about sulfur. It's a component of important proteins, vitamins, and enzymes. I have told it to you before that proteins are made up of amino acid, and vitamins का आप daily life में सुनते रहते हैं, vitamin C, vitamin D, and there are so many important enzymes. So many important vitamins which are required by us. So sulfur is present in many vitamins and enzymes, playing very important role. So sulfur is a very important macronutrient required by plants. And then there is another macronutrient, calcium, और calcium का तो हम सुनते ही रहते हैं, how much important it is for the pregnant mother and the lactating mother and even kids of growing age, because it activates enzymes. It is also a structural component of cell wall, influences water movements in cells. Apart from that, it is also involved in lots of other things. It is involved in muscular contractions. It is also involved in structure of bones, solidity and rigidity of bones. It supports various organs. It is a very important macronutrient which is controlling all these activities. And it is also involved in water movement in cells. When calcium is responsible for the movement of water in cells or moving the water, moving the water out of cell, okay? So, and apart from that, we also know that calcium is required in our bones. I don't know if I have discussed this point, which is very important to provide us a framework and to provide us a framework to walk. And to regulate the presence of calcium in our body, vitamin D is also playing very important role. Vitamin D is the one which basically balances the amount of calcium in blood and bones. There are other things which are maintaining the balance too, but vitamin D particularly is maintaining balance of calcium in the bones from the blood. Okay, now let's talk about micronutrients. As the name shows, micronutrients are those nutrients which are required in less amount by plants. Let's talk about them one by one. Iron. हम आयरन का तो एनिमल में रोल बचपन से पढ़ते हुए आ रहे हैं, but right now we are discussing the role of iron in plants. It is important in photosynthesis and it activates many enzymes. It is an activator for plant enzymes. Molybdenum, component of the enzyme that reduces nitrates to ammonia. Plants absorb nitrogen in the form of nitrates, NO3 radical. I repeat, NO3 radical. And These radicals are very important in the growth of plant to get nitrogen from the soil. So this enzyme, this micronutrient is converting the nitrates to ammonia, and that ammonia is going to be further used by plants, which is very important thing done by molybdenum. It is important in building amino acids or amino acids. So molybdenum is present in the structure of many amino acids too. Boron. It is important in sugar transport in plants. Remember, the transportation of sugar or transportation of fruit takes place from phloem tissues to various parts of the plant. We haven't gone in detail, but we have studied phloem tissues somehow. Though boron is involved in transportation of sugar in different areas of plant, it is also present in cell division of plants, cells, and synthesizing certain enzymes. Now you can know the importance of enzymes, that it is required at various levels, and different things are involved in synthesizing enzymes, like boron is involved, mm, iron is involved, many other micronutrients or macronutrients are involved. Even look at the copper. Copper is also a component of several enzymes. So which means if we are not going to take copper in our diet, we will be lacking all those important enzymes, and as a result those reactions will slow down, or those reactions are not occurring at all. It depends. So I was talking about, आज अगेन फिर वही हो रहा है. मुझे नहीं मालूम मैं कितनी देर में नींद आई हुई है, वहीं पे स्टक हो जाता है मेरा ब्रेन. फिर मैं चलती हूँ, फिर मैं चलती हूँ, फिर मैं चलती हूँ. So I'm sorry for that. Let's move toward another mineral, which is manganese. It is involved in enzyme activity for photosynthesis. As you know, photosynthesis is very important and compulsory process in plants. So, photosynthesis requires certain enzymes where manganese is also playing its part. So, manganese is very important mineral for plants. And it is also involved in respiration and nitrogen metabolism, all the vital roles, vital reactions of plants. Photosynthesis, respiration, and nitrogen is also very important thing required by plants, because nitrogen makes 70% for environment, and it is required in many things by plants. And manganese is involved in maintaining the balance of all these things. Zinc is a micronutrient which is required by a large number of enzymes in plants. So if only the plant is deficient of zinc in the soil or manganese in the soil, lots of important reactions are going to be affected. So it's going to retard the activity of plants. It's going to affect the plants badly. So plants also require chlorine, which is involved in osmosis of water. Chlorine is an ion of sodium chloride, or in general, chlorine is an ion which is present. It will be considered as salt. As a result, the more the salt is, the more that cell will attract water towards it. What I'm trying to say is, आपने osmosis पढ़ लिया हुआ है 4th chapter में. You know that osmosis is the phenomenon which involves the transportation of water from higher solute concentration, from low solute concentration to high solute concentration. So chlorine is involved in osmosis of water, which is also very important phenomena of plants to maintain the balance of water all over, and that balance is handled by chlorine as well. Next is nickel. Nickel is required in a nitrogen metabolism in plants because nitrogen is very important element required by plants. So nickel is also involved in the digestion of nitrogen, which shows its importance. So every nutrient is required by plants, and the role they play is so important that when they are not going to be present in the soil, in the plants, they're going to face problems. So let's move to the roles of nitrogen and magnesium. And I have divided this topic in your book where it was like roles of nitrogen and magnesium. But the first paragraph is relevant to role of nitrogen, and the second paragraph is relevant to role of magnesium. So I'm dividing here, and I'm even highlighting some subheadings. Or you can use this method to highlight different things in your book to learn it easily. Please note down these headings as well. Whatever the new thing, if I tell you, kindly note it down. So, nitrogen. Again, I have told it to you a few minutes before that nitrogen is very important nutrient which is required by plants. The sources of nitrogen in plants are from nitrates because plant is getting nitrogen from the soil in the form of nitrates, from the air in the form of nitrates. Nitrate in chemistry is a NO3 radical, like sodium nitrate, calcium nitrate, magnesium nitrate, anyone, you name it. So nitrogen is mostly present in air. 70% of our nitrogen is in the air. So how the plants are going to absorb? Plants cannot, girls, absorb nitrogen from air. So rather they absorb as nitrates from the soil. यहाँ पर कुछ और चीज़ें भी help कर रही हैं. Basically there is a special kind of bacteria which is helping to absorb the atmospheric nitrogen into nitrates by plants. So I think this one is enough. Whatever I've told you is enough here because we haven't studied the nitrogen cycle. How plants absorb nitrogen from air or from their atmosphere in the form of nitrates. It's although that nitrogen cycle is very easy to understand, but this is not our topic. Next, nitrogen as a part of polymers. Nitrogen is a major component of proteins, hormones, chlorophyll, vitamins, and enzymes essential for plant life. So, nitrogen is present in almost every polymer, every essential polymer, proteins, hormones. Chlorophyll is so important in plants. Vitamins and enzymes, enzymes are essential for plant life. So it's a very important nutrient. Uses of nitrogen. Nitrogen metabolism is a major factor in stem and leaf growth. When the plants are involved in metabolizing nitrogen and consuming nitrogen, that is the main factor in the growth of plants. But excess of nitrogen is not good for plants. The excess of nitrogen is delaying flowering process and fruiting process. What do you mean by delaying flowering and fruiting process? Means they are making it late for the plants to bear flowers and fruits. Plants have a time to bear flowers and fruits. So this extra nitrogen can delay the process of this flowering and fruiting, which is not good for plants. What happens if the plant is deficient of nitrogen? उसमें nitrogen कम है या है ही नहीं, तो बहुत कम है. So what is going to happen? The deficiency of nitrogen lessens the yield, causes yellowing of leaves and stunt growth. Reduces EA means पैदावार ही कम हो जाएगी. जब पत्ते पौधे डंठल भर ही नहीं रहे तो पैदावार उस फसल की कम होगी ना. और बाग की कम होगी. It also causes yellowing and delay fruit production in plants and even stunt growth. Stunt growth means limited, बहुत छोटू सा पौधा हो जाएगा, बोना सा, and that is called as stunt growth. उसके branches सही तरह से grow नहीं हो. So these are the roles of nitrogen which I have separately mentioned. Kindly note them down in your book. Let's move to role of magnesium. Achha, magnesium is such an important nutrient that it is present in chlorophyll. And you know that chlorophyll is very important nutrient in plants. बगैर chlorophyll के photosynthesis कैसे होगी? So look at this structure. It's a big polymer. Magnesium is present in the center of all these complicated rings, pentagon ring and hexagon rings, mostly pentagon. Magnesium is present in the center, which means this nutrient, micronutrient, is required by chlorophyll. Otherwise, chlorophyll is not going to be there. When a plant is deficient of magnesium, then plant is deficient of chlorophyll. When a plant is deficient of chlorophyll, then that plant is unable to make food or is able to make less food, which will threaten the survival of that plant. So I told you it's a structural component of chlorophyll. It is also part of plant enzymes. It is also necessary for the functioning of plant enzymes to produce carbohydrates, sugars, and fats. So there are many enzymes where magnesium is playing its part. That without magnesium, those enzymes cannot produce carbohydrates, sugars, and fats. So as you can see, magnesium is a very important mineral or nutrient which is required by plants. These micronutrients and macronutrients are playing vital role, very important role for the survival of plants. So if a soil lacks them, the plant is going to be deficient, so the growth is not going to be good. And when we eat those plants, we also become deficient of certain nutrients. If the soil doesn't have proper nutrients, we, the heterotrophs, are also not going to have proper nutrients and are going to face lots of problems, health related issues. So plants should get all these nutrients, micronutrients and macronutrients, and ultimately we should also get these nutrients in a balanced form. What are the uses of magnesium? It is used for fruit and nut formation and essential for germination of seeds. It is very important nutrient which is required at very different levels. Deficiency of magnesium can cause yellowing and wilting of leaves. If you look at this leaf, this one, these are the, this one is showing yellow leaves, and here in this diagram I'm showing wilting. Wilting means मुरझा जाना, पत्ते मुरझा जाते हैं. तो हम ये समझ होते हैं कि पानी की कमी भी होती होगी, but that deficiency of magnesium can also lead to the wilting of plants, and ultimately the plant can die. Because when the plant is going to wilt, then how it's going to survive later on? If this process keeps on going, so the plant will be unable to survive that harsh conditions, right? So magnesium is a very important nutrient. So today I have this much knowledge for you. We have covered The definition of nutrition, we have talked about autotrophs, we have talked about heterotrophs. These are very important terms used many times in biology. We have also covered macronutrients and micronutrients. The role of macronutrients, you have to learn it somehow. Role of micronutrients. What is the role of nitrogen? Nitrogen is very important nutrient required by plants. And then role of magnesium, which is also very important nutrient required by plants. So this is all about today's lecture. We will study next topic in the next class. Allah Hafiz, please keep on reading it and ask me questions when you don't understand or something, any interesting information. You can even ask that on WhatsApp. Okay, girls? Allah Hafiz.